In the past, I've made icebergs on internet mysteries, true crime and unsolved cases, and pop culture conspiracies, so I thought it'd be fun to do one on disturbing lost media. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries, conspiracies, and true crime, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon and a PayPal, so if you're interested in supporting the channel, feel free to check those out, links will be in the description. I was intending on filming the intro at least with my camera as I normally do, but if you live in the UK, you know we're in the middle of a crazy heatwave right now, and it's just far too warm to be dressed appropriately for a video, or for my makeup to even stay on my face, so I decided against it, but we'll probably be back to the crappy British weather by next week. Anyway, this video will contain vague discussions of content that will be unsettling to some, so proceed with caution. If you have the stomach for it, head over to my Patreon for an uncut version of this video, which features more gory details and extra entries that are too graphic for YouTube. Uncut videos are ad-free and available to all tiers. I was partly inspired by Plague Moth's Not Safe for Life iceberg and Blame It on Georgie's Lost Media iceberg, both of which are fascinating videos that I recommend checking out. This video will feature solely on lost media though, as in totally lost, partially lost, or partially found, but not totally found, and only media that is disturbing in some way. The Lost Media Wiki was also a huge help in putting this together. They have a whole Not Safe for Life section, so head over there for more info on many of these entries. The term lost media seems to cause some disagreement, as some class lost media as media that has literally been lost and no one knows where it is, whereas others define it as any media that is not available to the public. For example, when police decide against releasing evidence to the public. I'll be going with the latter, so some of the entries on this iceberg are not truly lost per se, but have been destroyed or confiscated and are not currently available to watch publicly. I realise that not every example on this iceberg is literally not safe for life, particularly in the first tier, but they are all at least somewhat disturbing, increasing the further down the iceberg we go. While I've tried to pick examples where the media itself is unsettling, there are a few that are less so, but the backstories still qualify them for a spot on this iceberg. I'm probably going to split this into two parts, so this video will focus on the first two tiers and part 2 will feature the final two tiers. Starting out relatively light with a horror and sci-fi adventure game that was released on PC in 1995. The cut that was publicly released is renowned for being gritty and depressing, but it seems that some worse parts were taken out. Games Master, a British TV show, had a gore special episode where they showed gory clips from different games. One of those games was I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and it showed scenes that don't appear in the version that was released publicly, such as a meat locker with human bodies hanging on hooks, which was changed to slabs of beef instead, and a scene where one of the characters eats a baby. Some of these scenes were likely removed to reduce controversy surrounding the game. Father Ted is a British sitcom that ran for 3 seasons between 1995 and 1998. The final episode, Going to America, involved Father Ted saving Father Kevin when he's about to take his own life by jumping off a window ledge. However, a different ending was originally planned where Ted joins Kevin and they both take their own lives. Prior to filming the final season, Dermot Morgan, who played Ted, began experiencing health issues, including high blood pressure. Filming for the season was a long and difficult process, and one scene in particular, where Ted dances excitedly, seemed to overexert him. There were multiple takes because the actor who played Kevin kept getting his lines wrong. At one point, Dermot said, "I can't do this anymore, I don't feel well. This isn't good, I really don't feel well." Still, he persisted with the scene. The day after recording the episode, he hosted a dinner party in London. By the end of the meal, he was feeling unwell, so went to his bedroom. He returned some time after, but soon collapsed. No one realised he'd already had a heart attack at this point. He didn't respond to CPR and died at just 45 years old. The dance scene was thought to be a contributing factor, though it remains in the episode. The writers of the show already felt that the original ending might be unsuitable, but Dermot's death solidified their decision to change it. You can read the scripts for the original ending in the book Father Ted: The Complete Scripts, though the footage has never been made public. Cannibal Holocaust is a movie that was released in 1980. It was so realistic for the time that people thought it was a genuine snuff film, and the director was arrested on murder charges. Those charges were dropped when he proved the actors hadn't been murdered, but he was still convicted of obscenity. The movie remains controversial to this day due to the real animal deaths. I have a whole video on Cannibal Holocaust if you want to know more. Something that I wasn't actually aware of when I made the video is a scene that ended up being lost media. In the scene, an injured Shamatari warrior is lowered into piranha-infested waters and was supposed to be eaten alive. They did start filming the scene, but it never got finished because the piranhas were difficult to control and the underwater camera kept malfunctioning. There are a couple of stills which show piranhas hanging from the leg of the warrior, but any actual footage has likely been discarded. Bratayley is the name of a YouTube channel run by a family of two parents, Bill and Katie, and their three kids, Caleb, Annie and Hayley. On the 1st of October 2015, Caleb tragically died from an undiagnosed, incurable genetic heart disease called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Earlier that day, the family was filming when Hayley lost a tooth, and that footage was uploaded nearly a week later. Seeing as the family had vlogged every day for 4 years prior to Caleb's death, and there was known footage of that day in particular, there's a decent chance that more footage of that day exists, or at least existed. The existence of this isn't confirmed, so the contents of the hypothetical footage is even more speculative. I doubt Caleb's death itself was filmed, or the aftermath, but perhaps there was some context running up to it. The Jeremy Kyle Show was a British daytime talk show where Jeremy would help guests to resolve problems and repair relationships, in theory at least. Common reasons for appearing on the show included cheating partners and family members stealing from each other, and lie detectors and DNA tests were often used to find out the truth. In May 2019, 63-year-old Steve Diamond appeared on the show with his fiancée Jane. She believed he was cheating and wanted him to take a lie detector test, which he ended up failing. According to an audience member, nothing was out of the ordinary at first, but when Steve failed, he collapsed to the ground and the pair were visibly devastated. Jeremy reportedly made a number of comments to Steve, calling him a serial liar and a failure. The pair broke up after the episode, and a week later, Steve's body was found after he took his own life. 4 days later, ITV suspended future recording, and 2 days later, they completely cancelled the show. The website and social media accounts were swiftly deleted, as well as all the clips on YouTube and ITV Player. The coroner believed Jeremy's comments may have contributed to Steve's death, and it was revealed that Jeremy was aware that Steve suffered with depression and had been prescribed medication for it. The episode featuring Steve was never aired, and likely never will be. There are probably many other episodes of The Jeremy Kyle Show that are no longer publicly available due to them being taken down by ITV. Event Horizon was a sci-fi horror film released in 1997 with a planned runtime of at least 130 minutes. However, when the director showed the film to Paramount, they felt it was too gruesome, as did test audiences, which resulted in 30 minutes worth of footage being discarded. The deleted scenes included a very violent scene where a man pulled his intestines out through his mouth and another character having screws drilled into his teeth. Some of the deleted scenes, which were reportedly found in a Transylvanian salt mine, were included in the 2006 DVD release as bonus features and have ended up online since, though the quality isn't great. The rest have been destroyed, though you can read detailed summaries online. In 2012, it was reported that producer Lloyd Levin had found the original cut of the film on a VHS, though that probably wasn't legit, as it doesn't appear to have been mentioned since. On the 26th of April 2003, Aaron Ralston was descending down a slot canyon when a boulder moved and pinned his hand against the canyon wall. For 3 days, Aaron remained there, trying to chip away at the rock with a knife, rationing the small amount of water and food he had with him, and eventually resorting to drinking his own urine. He filmed a video diary for his friends and family, believing he would die there as no one knew where he was, and no one had passed by to help him. After being stuck for 3 days, he attempted to amputate his arm to free himself, but it was more difficult than he thought. On the 6th day, he tried again and eventually succeeded. He rappelled down and started on the 13-kilometre hike back to his car, though was spotted by a helicopter search party on the way who rescued him. James Franco, who starred in 127 Hours, a movie about the incident, and the producers, have watched Aaron's footage, though Aaron doesn't plan on making it public. A short video clip plus a compilation of audio clips has surfaced. You can watch those on YouTube, but the rest have only ever been seen by a handful of people. The Dick Cavett Show was the title of several American talk shows hosted by Dick Cavett over a period of 5 decades. In June 1971, Jeremy Rodale, a longevity and health guru, appeared on the show as a guest. Dick interviewed him and he made several comments relating to his good health, even proclaiming that he had decided to live until he's 100. When Dick began talking to the other guest, Jeremy slumped backwards and made a sound which was later likened to snoring. Despite claims that Dick turned to him and asked, "Are we boring you, Mr. Rodale?" he denies any memory of saying that and recalls knowing instantly that Jeremy was dead. He has spoken about the event publicly many times, so it's well known what happened, but for obvious reasons, the episode never aired and the footage has not been released to the public. Dude, This Sucks was an MTV show in 2000 that only ever got a pilot. The idea of the show was that 2 team captains would each perform a routine, including the bizarre talents of the contestants. If any of the judges don't like their act, they hit down with a hammer and the act is disqualified. At the end of the show, whichever team has the most points wins the cash prize. In one of the acts, studio employees told 2 teenage girls to stand on the stage for a part in the show involving 2 performers known as the Shower Rangers. They weren't told what was going to happen. The Shower Rangers were 2 men dressed in Boy Scout uniforms who, after taking a powerful laxative, bent over in front of the girls and let rip, for lack of a better phrase, splattering them from head to toe. Understandably, the girls sued, as they had no idea that was about to happen and had since been ridiculed at school over it. At least one of the girls was only 14, so it's a pretty messed up thing to happen. That footage from the show never aired, and it seems that there are no plans to ever release it. Joy Junction was a Christian game show in the 80s, set in the fictional village of Joy Junction and featuring puppets. Children were involved in the show and played games that were also designed to teach valuable lessons from the Bible. Ronald Brown was cast as a ventriloquist, and in 2013, he was charged with possessing child pornography. Not only that, he had spoken in great detail on a group about abusing, cooking and eating children, one of whom being a child he met at the church. It doesn't sound like Ronald actually murdered anyone, but he likely did have inappropriate contact with children. As a result of these charges, it's thought that most episodes of Joy Junction were destroyed, with the exception of 2 full episodes and various clips that have been uploaded to YouTube. Marquis de Sade, born in 1740, was a French nobleman, politician, philosopher, and most relevantly, an extremely controversial writer. His work was very not safe for work, and he literally inspired the term sadism. so I'm sure you can imagine the kind of topics he wrote about. He spent his life in and out of prison before being involuntarily committed, spending a total of 32 years locked up. He never stopped writing though. If his pen and paper were taken, he'd carve into the walls. If he couldn't do that, he'd bite into his fingers and write using his own blood. After his death, his son was so ashamed of his work that he burned a lot of it. It's unknown how many different pieces of work, but some still remain and occasionally surface, such as one titled 120 Days of Sodom, which was found in 1905. While no one can dispute how disturbed Sade was, his work has received more lenient reviewing in recent times, with many viewing it as revolutionary. The Dixie Chicks were once a pretty successful band, until one political opinion destroyed their reputation. In 2003, following George W. Bush's decision to declare war on Iraq, Dixie Chicks publicly spoke out against it, with lead vocalist Natalie Maines stating that she was ashamed to be from the same state as Bush. Their soon-to-be ex-fans were not happy, and Natalie was forced to make a public apology for what she said. But it was too late. The sales had already dropped dramatically, and suddenly no one wanted to work with them. They even received many angry letters from fans who felt betrayed. One in particular was a very graphic death threat. The full letter has never been seen publicly, though it is known that the letter went into great detail on how Natalie would be murdered at her next show in Dallas. Thankfully, she wasn't, perhaps due to increased security, but the band took a long hiatus after this. Sadistic B is a film produced in 2002 by well-known internet critic Brad Jones, also known as the Cinema Snob. The movie was very graphic and showed characters eating feces and peeing on each other. It gets more disturbing when a woman who finds out her boyfriend cheated on her decided to tie him up and perform a very unprofessional and not consensual surgery on him. Presumably not long after its production, the movie was stolen along with more of Brad's films and his entire DVD collection. In 2018, when asked if he was in possession of some of the raw footage from the film, Brad said it was possible but unlikely, and he has no way of viewing the tapes he still has to find out. Scarred was an MTV show that ran for a few months during 2007. It featured multiple clips each episode of people getting injured performing stunts while taking part in skating, skiing or other sports. The person in the clip would explain what happened and show the scar they received from the accident. The show aired for 2 seasons, a total of 21 episodes, but was never picked up for a 3rd season. This was rumoured to be because it wasn't particularly popular, and the host, Jacoby Shaddix, was on tour with his band Papa Roach. When the episodes were removed from the MTV website, a couple of them were totally lost. 9 out of 11 full episodes in the 1st season have resurfaced online, but less of season 2. There's at least one clip found in most episodes, and I think there's a decent chance the rest will be found eventually, at least each individual clip, if not the full episodes. The Slaughter is a 1971 exploitation film produced by Michael and Roberta Findlay. The pair were known for making very poor quality movies, and The Slaughter was the next in a long line, flopping at the box office and quickly fading off the radar. 5 years later, Alan Shackleton purchased the film, intending to rename it and add a new ending. He titled it Snuff and advertised the updated movie as if one of the actors had actually been murdered during production. Naturally, this caused quite a stir, but when the possibility of this movie being a genuine snuff film was disproven, people lost interest in it. Snuff can be found easily online now, but the original The Slaughter is unfortunately another piece of lost media. Armchair Theatre was a British anthology series of single plays that ran from 1966 to 1974. One episode was a live production of a sci-fi play titled Underground, which centred around a group of survivors of a nuclear war who were living underground in London. One of the characters, Carl, played by 33-year-old Gareth Jones, was supposed to suffer a heart attack in one scene. However, the scene was never filmed due to Gareth complaining off stage that he wasn't feeling well. Shortly after, he was walking towards his co-stars when he suddenly collapsed. It turned out he actually had a heart attack and sadly died soon after. The remainder of the play had to be quickly rewritten, and the other actors had to improvise to finish it. They saw Gareth collapse but didn't get told that he had died until after the play. I don't know if they had assumed the worst already, or if they thought he'd be okay. It's unclear to me whether or not Gareth's heart attack was caught on camera, but there are no known copies of the recording of the play. At the time, live TV wasn't automatically recorded, and considering the footage hasn't surfaced online since, it's almost definitely lost for good. Charles Manson was an infamous cult leader whose followers committed 9 murders in 1969. Prior to the murders and his eventual conviction, Charles considered the possibility of a career in music and befriended Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. He was invited to Dennis's brother's studio to record music, around 10 songs in total. However, the friendship deteriorated before any of the music could be officially released. Dennis actually stole one of Charles's songs, rewrote a few lyrics, and released it as a Beach Boys song titled Never Learn Not to Love. Obviously, Charles wasn't happy about that and sent death threats to Dennis, and it's thought that this incident was a factor in the murders committed by Charles's followers just a few months later. The recordings have never been released, and some dispute the existence of them, though people involved in the project have confirmed the story. It's not known if any copies exist today though, and if they do, they're extremely rare. A 1999 wrestling match between Droz and D'Lo Brown ended catastrophically when a stunt went wrong. Droz was wearing a loose shirt, and when D'Lo attempted his signature move, the running powerbomb, he wasn't able to grip onto Droz correctly. Droz was unable to perform a jump to aid in the manoeuvre, and this resulted in him landing on his head and fracturing 2 vertebrae in his neck. He was in surgery for hours and survived, but the injuries left him a quadriplegic, with no movement below the neck, ending his wrestling career. The match was pre-taped, not live, so the decision was made not to air the footage. A very brief clip showing Droz being carried off the ring featured in WWE's Don't Try This at Home public service announcements, and there is a photo of Droz lying in the ring, but that's currently all that's available. Droz has made clear many times that he holds no animosity towards D'Lo, and that he fully acknowledges his injury was an accident. He has since regained movement in his upper body and arms, but he still requires round-the-clock care and has to take medication daily and lie flat for long periods of time. He has got a pretty badass wheelchair though. A storyboard jam is a storyboard that is passed around the production crew, with each member adding something to it. It's seen as light-hearted fun to ease tension during work, and the end product is usually rude and offensive but humorous. The production crew of Rugrats, an animated kids show, created a storyboard jam that was particularly disturbing. When it was passed to Steve Russell, a director and animator, he claims to have been initially disgusted, but ended up adding to it, making it less and less safe for work. One frame showed Stu's uncensored crotch area. Russell passed it on, and other people added even worse frames, resulting in scenes. The storyboard was confiscated, and a couple of pages have surfaced online, but the rest are lost, perhaps destroyed. What's so creepy about this is that Steve Russell has since been accused of inappropriate contact with minors. In 2020, a woman alleged that Steve sent her inappropriate messages and art when she was just 16. So while under normal circumstances, a storyboard of this nature would certainly be in bad taste, but not necessarily incriminating, it seems that in this case, it could be a glimpse into a depraved mind. Mythbusters is a TV series initially broadcast in 2003. As the name suggests, it created various experiments to test different ideas or hypotheses to see if they were true or myth. In 2006, one episode centered around the myth that there's more nutrition in the cardboard box than the cereal. To test this, they had 3 groups of mice, one eating normal food, one eating sugary cereal, and the other eating cardboard. They noticed the cardboard mice were acting strangely and eventually realised one of them had eaten the others. Unsurprisingly, the network did not include this experiment in the episode in order to maintain the family-friendly image, and no footage has surfaced since then. Given that they thought the results would affect their reputation, I wonder why they did this experiment in the first place. They refused to test the myth of drying a dog in a microwave, and even though the events of the experiment were unforeseen, it's all still pretty unethical for a hypothesis that could have been disproven with logic. Rob Harris was a professional sky surfer who was filming a Mountain Dew commercial in December 1995. The commercial was titled 007 and was a parody of James Bond, where a man in a tuxedo dives from an exploding plane. The script required Rob to jump from a height of 5,000 feet, open his parachute at 3,000 feet, perform some hoops and twists, then open the second parachute. Somehow, his parachute lines became tangled and he was unable to deploy his reserve in time, resulting in his death. Although the footage of him falling and dying probably won't ever be released to the public, an edited version of the ad was released a few months after his death with his parents' permission. It included footage of Rob from the takes before he fell to his death. Megan Wants a Millionaire was a reality TV show that aired very briefly between the 2nd and the 16th of August 2009. The show centred around Megan Hauserman, a swimsuit model, and 17 men who basically competed to have Megan as their trophy wife. The show didn't do particularly well from the off due to low ratings and controversy surrounding the concept. 3 episodes in, VH1 cancelled the series after it emerged that one of the contestants, Ryan Jenkins, had murdered his wife on the 15th of August. Less than 2 weeks later, Ryan's body was found dead in a motel after he took his own life. The first 3 episodes of Megan Wants a Millionaire were thought to be lost for some time, until someone uploaded them to Google Drive in 2020. The month after that, Megan uploaded episodes 4 and 5 to YouTube, but the 6th episode has never surfaced. It's not known if Megan herself has a copy, or if it was destroyed years ago. Ryan Jenkins also appeared in season 3 of I Love Money, so that season was also cancelled. In April 1999, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold murdered 12 students and 1 teacher and injured many more in a high school shooting. Prior to the event, the pair often played a video game titled Doom, in which players can create their own WADs. As I understand it, that's basically mods for the game that can change aspects of it or add new levels. Eric created various WADs that he shared with his friends and claimed to have created a level that was Columbine High School. It's unclear what this level featured, with rumours suggesting Eric and Dylan used it to practice the shooting in advance, but that's unconfirmed. It's thought that this WAD might be titled realdoom.zip, because Eric mentioned that in one of his other WADs that was discovered more recently, though again, that's unconfirmed. The Jenny Jones Show was an American daytime talk show that filmed an episode in March 1995 about a man named Scott Amager who had a crush on his colleague Jonathan Schmitz. In the episode, Jonathan is brought on stage expecting to see a female colleague he thinks has a crush on him, but instead he is met by Scott. Jonathan is visibly embarrassed but laughs it off and doesn't appear to have taken offence. 3 days after the filming, however, Jonathan, who had a long history of mental illness and substance abuse, shot and killed Scott at his home. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to at least 25 years in prison. Clips of the episode have featured in a HBO documentary and in another series, and they can easily be found online, though the producers decided against releasing the full episode. Osama bin Laden was the leader of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda and the man responsible for 9/11, unless you buy into the conspiracy theories. In May 2011, he was killed when US Navy SEALs raided a compound in Pakistan. There were reportedly 3 sets of photos of bin Laden's body, including photos from the raid itself, which also show 3 other bodies. Barack Obama, who was President of America at the time, decided against releasing the photos to the public, a decision that was somewhat controversial. Some supported him, worrying that releasing them might inflame anti-American sentiment in the Middle East, but others believed the photos should be considered public records. The fact that no photos were released, paired with the fact that bin Laden's body was buried at sea, has led conspiracy theorists to believe he was never killed. Releasing the photos might convince some of those to reconsider, but I can imagine many would just say it was someone else, or that it was photoshopped. Requests have been made to make the photos public, but they were declined. Mita Chaibanshah was a famous actor in his home country of Thailand, at his peak starring in nearly half of the 75 to 100 films produced yearly by the Thai film industry. In 1970, as well as starring in, for the first time he produced and directed a movie titled In Si Thong, which translates as Golden Eagle. His character was called In Si Daeng, or Red Eagle, and sounds to be a superhero kind of character. One of the final scenes was planned to show Red Eagle climbing on a rope ladder that's hanging beneath a helicopter before being flown off into the sunset. However, when it came to filming this scene on the final day of shooting, the helicopter was flying too high above the ground, and Mita was only able to reach the bottom of the ladder, so grabbed it with his hands. The pilot was unaware that Mita wasn't on the ladder as planned, and so continued to ascend until he eventually lost his grip and fell to his death. This was all caught on camera, and the scene, even though it went totally wrong, was still included in the movie. The context, or how it was portrayed, isn't exactly known, and by the time it was released on DVD in 2005, the footage of Mita's death had been removed. It's never re-emerged since. Christine Chubbuck was an American news reporter who spoke out against blood and guts finding its way into the media, and believed that sensationalism was destroying legitimate journalism. In 1974, she volunteered to produce a piece on during which she asked a police officer how someone would go about taking their own life. On the 15th of July, Christine arrived at her place of work to film the news report for that day, and colleagues noted that she seemed particularly cheerful. No one could have predicted what was about to happen. Around 8 minutes in, she turned to the camera and said, "In keeping with the WXLT practice of presenting the most immediate and complete reports of local blood and guts news, TV40 presents what is believed to be a television first, in living colour, exclusive coverage of an attempted suicide." She then proceeded to shoot herself. This was live TV, so enough people saw it in real time, but it's unlikely that anyone recorded it, as VCRs were not commonplace back then. Rumours of it featuring in movies and documentaries have been disproven, and a recreation has been uploaded to YouTube, but the official footage will likely remain private. In July 1999, Daniel Dukes snuck into SeaWorld Orlando and decided to go skinny dipping in Tillicum's sleep tank. Tillicum was, at the time, the largest orca in captivity, though he died in 2017, having killed a total of 3 people, Daniel being the second. Tillicum reportedly played around with Daniel before killing him, then continued to play with his body until it was discovered the next morning, being paraded around on Tillicum's back. It's plausible that his death may have been caught on CCTV. SeaWorld has declined to comment, which makes me think that there is, or at least was, footage of the incident. The existence of a few photos of the body, taken by employees, has been confirmed, though they are not accessible to the public. Dawn Brancheau was a SeaWorld trainer and the third person to be killed by Tillicum, the orca who also killed Daniel Dukes. Crowds had gathered to see Tillicum that day, and the routine went as it normally would, until he grabbed Dawn's arm. A tourist was filming the performance and caught this on camera, but the clip soon ends after without showing Dawn's demise. There is confirmed footage of the death itself, but this has never surfaced, and if SeaWorld have their way, it never will. They tried to make it look like an accident rather than an attack, suggesting she was dragged down by her ponytail. In actuality, Tillicum clearly had her arm, not her ponytail, and it seems he attacked her because she ran out of food to give him, and because he didn't perform one of the tricks as well as he could have. It's sad that SeaWorld doesn't care enough about the orcas not to keep them in captivity, but even go to the lengths of misrepresenting an attack where a woman literally died to protect their reputation while they continued to ignore the problem. Great Temptation was an Australian game show that aired between 1970 and 1975. One episode never made it past filming, however, when one of the contestants passed out right after she won the game. Doctors were called who revealed that she'd actually died, though couldn't determine a cause of death. Filming for the episode was stopped immediately, and therefore it was never completed, let alone aired. It's possible that the footage still exists, though it's not likely, especially considering reusing tapes was common back in the 70s. Heartbeat in the Brain is a documentary directed, produced by and starring Amanda Fielding. At the age of 27, after trying and failing for 4 years to find a doctor to perform trepanation on her, she decided to do it herself and film the whole thing. Trepanation is an ancient procedure which varied in popularity over the years. Proponents claim it can allow you to achieve a higher state of consciousness, as well as a permanent high. It also supposedly cures and prevents various diseases, including dementia, and was used in the past to rid the body of evil spirits. These claims are not backed by science, though at least some people who have undergone the procedure, including Amanda, claim to have experienced a noticeable and positive change afterwards. Jose Luis Calva, born in 1969, was a Mexican murderer and cannibal. Police arrived at his home in October 2007 after his girlfriend had been reported missing. When they found him, he was in the middle of eating his girlfriend's body after seasoning the meat with lemon. He was arrested and charged and was suspected of committing up to 8 murders in total, though he took his own life before a trial could take place. When his home was searched, in addition to a picture of Hannibal Lecter, police also found Jose's unfinished novel, the title of which translated to Cannibal Instinct or 12 Days. The novel reportedly had themes involving cannibalism, violence, and the consumption of feces, amongst other disturbing things. It's rumoured that more texts were found alongside the novel, such as poems, but police haven't confirmed that, nor have they publicised the novel. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon were Dutch tourists who went missing while on holiday in Panama. They went for a walk in the forest around the Baru volcano, and when they didn't show up to meet their tour guide the next morning, their rooms were searched. Their personal belongings remained, but no sign of the women, so they were reported missing. Despite extensive searches, nothing was initially found until a backpack 2.5 months later, which contained personal belongings, including both women's phones and a camera. Chris's shorts were found nearby too, which could suggest that they met with foul play. To further support this theory, it's strongly suspected that the EXIF data on the photos on the camera had been altered due to some inconsistencies. It appears that some of the photos on the camera had been deleted, perhaps by one of the women or by someone else who may have been involved. A couple of months after the discovery of the backpack, human remains were found close by and confirmed to belong to Chris and Lisanne. Authorities believe they got lost on the trail tried to cross an unstable wire bridge and fell to their deaths. Some of their photos have been leaked online, but lower quality versions. None are in their original uncompressed form with clean EXIF data, preventing internet sleuths from analysing them properly. The case is closed, so the original photos are unlikely to be released. Greg and Dwayne Allman formed the Allman Brothers Band in 1969 and were considered influential in southern rock music until their breakup in 2014. The brothers were involved in a biographic film about their band titled Midnight Rider, after their well-known single decades earlier. However, the film would never get completed after a tragic accident occurred. On the first day of filming, the actors attempted to film a scene in a remote location where William Hurt, who played Greg, was lying on a hospital bed on some train tracks. As they were filming, a train suddenly came around the corner and the crew had to quickly vacate the area. They weren't able to get the metal bed off the tracks and the train hit it, shooting pieces of shrapnel in all directions, with some hitting camera assistant Sarah Jones. She fell towards the moving train, which ended up killing her. A few other crew members suffered serious injuries, but they were lucky to be alive. Filming stopped straight after the accident, but the director still intended to finish the movie until Greg eventually filed a civil lawsuit against him. There's barely any footage online from Midnight Rider, but surprisingly, Sarah's death was captured and that clip can be easily found online. In 1928, Noah's Ark, a film based on the Bible story of the same name, was released. Filming for the flood scene was relentless, and it actually caused the death of 3 actors and critically injured another. John Wayne, an actor who rose in popularity years later, featured as an extra in the scene and he almost died too. The original cut of the film was 135 minutes long, though it was heavily criticised, particularly for the flood scene, which resulted in around 35 minutes of footage being removed. The flood scene is still in the movie, though it isn't as drawn out as the original version, which reportedly showed clips of the actors as they were drowning. You can watch the censored scene on YouTube, but all 35 minutes worth of deleted scenes were lost many years ago. Owen Hart was a professional wrestler at the time of his death, and his passion would end up leading to his demise. The match took place in front of a live audience and was to be shown in a pay-per-view broadcast. Being a bit of a joker, Owen planned to do a stunt that began with him being lowered into the ring by a harness and ended with him falling flat on his face in the ring. It all went wrong though when his harness was accidentally unlatched too soon and he fell 24 metres down, with his chest landing straight on the top rope of the ring. An ambulance was called, but Owen later died at the hospital from his injuries. Following a 15-minute break after the incident, the decision was made to continue, and the ring announcers later notified the audience that Owen had died. The death itself was not shown in the pay-per-view broadcast, but it was filmed nonetheless. It is reportedly archived alongside footage of the match where Droz was paralysed, with instructions never to view, duplicate or destroy it. The Skywaymen was a pseudo-documentary film about stunt flights produced in 1920. During the filming of a scene where a plane crash was simulated, the floodlights that were used to guide the pilots were not turned off and ended up dazzling them, resulting in them actually crashing the plane. It killed both pilots in the plane instantly, and the footage of the crash was included in the final cut of the film, right before the genuine reaction of one of the men's girlfriends as she realised what happened. No clips have surfaced online, let alone the whole movie, and only a few production stills, ads and photos showing the crash are known to exist. The Swell Season was a folk rock duo formed in Ireland in 2005. In August 2010, they were performing a concert in California when an audience member, Michael Pickles, got out of his seat, climbed to the rooftop and jumped to his death, landing within meters of the singer. There were a couple of paramedics and a doctor in the audience who attempted to resuscitate him, though he was eventually pronounced dead. It turned out Michael had recently been released from prison on bail after threatening to kill himself and his girlfriend just a few months prior. Clips of the concert prior to and following Michael's death can be found on YouTube, though footage of his actual death has not been uploaded. There's a decent chance it exists, and a YouTuber claims to own a copy, but they're unlikely to release it. Tony Renner was an American racing driver who began competitive racing at the age of 6. He competed in Indy Lights and the Indy Racing League until October 2003, when a tragic accident occurred. He was testing his car at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and on the first lap, as the car was spinning, wind got underneath it and it ended up flying into the fence. The car was split into two, and Tony had been killed on impact as a result of internal trauma. Paramedics tried and failed to resuscitate him, and he was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, where he was pronounced dead. The crash happened during a private test, so no one was recording it, but there was CCTV footage of it, which has never been released. There are a couple of photos of the aftermath, but they're after Tony and the car had been moved. Tony 48219, real name Anthony Powell, began uploading videos to YouTube in 2007, most of which focused on religion. His channel quickly became relatively well known, though mostly for having some very controversial views. He would often go on long and angry rants about evolution, atheists and black women, and had many accounts suspended due to the nature of his content. Throughout his time on YouTube, his mental health clearly deteriorated, and he eventually hinted that he might take his own life. What he actually decided to do was so much worse. On the 13th of April 2009, Tony arrived at the college where he studied in Michigan, headed to the classroom where he found 20-year-old Asia McGowan, and then shot her, then himself. Following the event, Tony's final channels were suspended, resulting in the deletion of the majority of his videos, though a small number were saved by others, either in full or clips. In May 2013, the widest tornado ever recorded, 1.6 miles wide at one point, moved through Oklahoma. A group of 3 storm chasers, Tim Samaras, his son Paul, and Carl Young, known as Twistex, travelled alongside the tornado with the intention of placing a drone in its path to measure atmospheric and seismic data in order to conduct research. At one point, it suddenly moved towards them and hovered in their location for a short while. The car was sucked into it, killing the 3 men. Tim remained in the car, but Paul and Carl's bodies were found around half a mile away. Carl's camera was found, and it seems that the majority of the event was filmed on it, though that footage has never been made public. Another storm chaser, Dan Robinson, was also following that same tornado behind the Twistex team, though didn't realise until he checked his dashcam footage. He was almost sucked up too, but thankfully made it out alive. Out of respect for the men's families, Dan has stated that he will not release the footage. So that concludes part 1 of my disturbing and not safe for life lost media iceberg. Part 2 is where we'll get into some of the really messed up stuff, so keep an eye out for that in the next few days. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and leave your thoughts in the comments. Huge thank you to my patrons, whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a few days for part 2.